Today I bring a narrative that will challenge your conceptions of life, death, and spirituality. We will explore the remarkable account of Vivian Thorne, a woman who experienced a near-death experience during a complicated pregnancy and received profound spiritual revelations. She witnessed something surprising about the fate of the souls of sexual men which completely transformed her vision of the afterlife. Stay until the end, because what she saw might alter your understanding of existence. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications so you won't miss any of the upcoming revealing stories. Hello, I'm Vivian Thorne, a history teacher at a public school in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm 35 years old and have always been passionate about storytelling, especially about the stories that shaped our world. But today, I'm here to share a different story, my own. I never imagined I would have something like this to tell. It's a story that completely transformed my life, taking me to the lowest point I've ever been, and in a blink, elevating me to a level of understanding I never thought possible. I will talk about my near-death experience. I know it might sound hard to believe. I'm still trying to understand everything that happened myself. But this experience showed me that life, with all its complexity, pain, and joy, is just a small part of something much larger. Before all this, I led a pretty ordinary life. I taught classes, spent time with my husband Samuel, went out with friends on weekends. We had been trying to have a child for a few years, without success. It was a difficult journey full of hopes and disappointments. But finally, after much time and several treatments, I became pregnant. We were so happy. We were finally realizing our dream of becoming parents. We started making plans, decorating the baby's room, choosing names. It was as if everything was falling into place. Little did we know that our lives were about to change in a way we could never have predicted. What I will recount next completely changed my view of life, death, and everything beyond that. It's an experience I carry with me every day, which makes me question everything I thought I knew about the world and about myself. I'm not a special person. I haven't written books about this. I haven't created any group or movement. I'm just someone who went through something extraordinary and feels the need to share it. Maybe my story can bring comfort. Maybe it can make someone question their beliefs. I don't know. I just know I need to tell it. So, if you are willing to listen, I would like to share my journey. A journey that began with pain and loss, but took me to places I never imagined existed. A journey beyond life as we know it. It all began when I was 5 months pregnant. Samuel and I were so excited. After years of frustrated attempts, treatments that seemed endless, and countless nights crying into my pillow, we had finally succeeded. Our dream of being parents was becoming a reality. I remember how we would spend hours talking about the future, imagining what our baby would be like, what kind of parents we would be. We bought clothes, furniture for the room, made plans. It was as if the world had gained new colors. But then, out of nowhere, things started to go wrong. It was during a routine checkup that the doctor noticed my body was beginning to dilate prematurely. I can't describe the fear I felt at that moment. It was as if the ground had disappeared from under my feet. The doctors couldn't explain the reason. They ran various tests, but nothing indicated the cause of the problem. Quickly, they decided to perform an emergency cerclage to try to keep our baby safe inside me. I remember the doctor explaining the procedure and the possible complications. His words seemed to come from far away. I was in shock. I could hardly process what was happening. Samuel held my hand, but I could see the fear in his eyes too. The surgery was a nightmare. I was awake, feeling every move, every tug. The fear of losing our baby was so intense that I could hardly breathe. I prayed the whole time, begging for everything to go right. When it was over, the doctor said it was a success. I felt a momentary relief, but the fear didn't leave me. I spent the night in the hospital, closely monitored. Samuel stayed with me the whole time, holding my hand, saying that everything would be okay. But the next day, what I feared most happened. My water broke. It was as if the whole world had stopped. The doctors hurried, trying to do something, anything. But I knew, deep in my heart, that it was too late. Our baby was born with underdeveloped lungs. He didn't survive. He was born lifeless. The pain I felt in that moment. There are no words to describe it. It was as if a part of me had died with him. Samuel was by my side in shock. He tried to console me, but I could see he was as broken as I was. We both cried, holding that tiny, fragile body, our son, whom we never got to know. But the tragedy didn't stop there. Right after the birth, I began losing a lot of blood. The placenta didn't come out correctly, and the doctors had to perform multiple emergency surgeries in the following days to try to save my life. It was as if I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare. The physical pain was intense but didn't compare to the emotional pain. I had lost my baby, and now I was fighting for my own life. Days of agony, of constant fear. Samuel didn't leave my side, but I could hardly register his presence. I was sinking into an abyss of pain and despair. I saw no more meaning in anything. And it was in this state, at this darkest moment of my life, that something happened. Something that would change everything I thought I knew about life and death. It was during the third surgery that everything changed. I felt increasingly weaker. I could hear the sounds around me. The beeps of the machines. The urgent voices of doctors and nurses. But it was as if everything was becoming more and more distant. Suddenly, everything went silent. The pain that had accompanied me for days simply vanished. It was as if someone had turned off a switch. In place of the pain, I felt a peace I had never experienced before. It was as if I was floating. I no longer felt my body. There was no weight. There were no limitations. I was pure consciousness. Then, I saw a light. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It wasn't a beam or a bright spot. It was more like a portal, an opening to something beyond our reality. The light was incredibly bright, but it didn't hurt to look at it. In fact, it was comforting, welcoming. I felt drawn to it as if it were calling me. I began to move toward the light. I wasn't walking or flying. It was more like being gently pulled. As I got closer, the feeling of peace intensified. When I entered the light, it was like diving into an ocean of pure love. There are no words in our language to adequately describe what I felt. It was as if every atom of my being was vibrating in perfect harmony with the universe. And then I saw him, not with my physical eyes, of course, but with a perception that went beyond the senses. It was God. He didn't have a defined form. It was more like a presence, an infinite consciousness, pure light and love. Beside him was another presence, smaller, but equally radiant. Instantly I knew it was Christ, not the Christ from paintings or statues, but the pure essence of what he represents. Compassion, unconditional love, eternal wisdom. There were no words. None were needed. The communication happened on a much deeper level. It was as if every question I ever had was answered at the moment it arose in my mind. I felt surrounded by a love so profound, so complete, that it made every bit of love I had ever experienced on earth seem like a pale shadow in comparison. It was a love that healed, that transformed, that transcended everything I knew. In that moment, I understood. I understood that the life we live on earth is just a minuscule fraction of our existence, that our daily concerns, our fears, our sorrows, all this is so small in the face of the vastness of eternity. I saw my whole life pass before me, not as a movie, but as if I were reliving each moment simultaneously. I saw the joys, the sorrows, the moments of success, and the moments of failure. And I realized that every experience, every interaction had meaning. I understood that we are all interconnected, that we are part of something much greater, that our actions, thoughts, and feelings affect not only us but the entire universe. It was an overwhelming revelation. It was as if, For the first time, I was seeing reality as it truly is, without the filters and limitations of human perception. And amidst all this understanding, all this peace and infinite love, I felt whole. For the first time in my life, there were no doubts, no fear. I was home. While in this state of expanded consciousness, I received a series of revelations about earthly life. It was as if a veil had been lifted, allowing me to see the reality behind everything we considered important in our daily lives. I saw how human emotions, anger, sadness, shame, fear, were completely irrelevant in the face of the immensity of eternity. It's not that they didn't have importance. They are part of the human experience and have their purpose. But I realize that we often let ourselves be consumed by these emotions, forgetting that they are temporary and, in the grand scheme of things, relatively insignificant. God, or this divine presence, showed me moments of my life that I considered crucial humiliations I suffered in childhood, that marked me deeply. The day I was rejected for a job I really wanted, the argument I had with my best friend in high school that estranged us for years. All these moments that seemed so big, so defining, simply disintegrated like dust in the face of this new perspective. I realized that these experiences, no matter how painful or joyful, were merely tools for our growth and learning. They weren't punishments or rewards, but opportunities for evolution. I saw how we often cling to material things, to status, to recognition, how we strive for things that, in the end, have no real value. Cars, houses, branded clothes, professional titles. All this seemed so small now. Not that these things were bad in themselves, but I realized how often we lose sight of what truly matters while chasing these goals. I understood that earthly life is a school. Every challenge, every relationship, every experience is a lesson. We are here to learn, to grow, to evolve spiritually, and often the most valuable lessons come from the most difficult moments. I saw how love is the most powerful force in the universe. Not the romantic love idealized in movies and books, but unconditional love. The love that doesn't judge, that doesn't demand, that simply accepts and nurtures. I realized that every act of kindness, every gesture of compassion, no matter how small, has an impact far greater than we can imagine. I understood that forgiveness is not just a noble act, but a necessity for our own evolution. I saw how resentment, grudges, and hurt are weights that we unnecessarily carry, preventing us from advancing on our spiritual journey. I realized that many of the beliefs and values we consider absolute are, in fact, limited human constructs. I saw how we often judge others based on our narrow standards, forgetting that each soul is on its own unique journey. I understood that death, which we fear so much, is just a transition, a passage to another state of being. I saw that life, in its essence, is eternal, that our souls continue far beyond this brief physical existence. These revelations were profound and transformative. It was as if I were seeing life through a completely new lens. Everything made sense in a way it never had before. And with this understanding came a feeling of peace and acceptance I had never experienced. But this journey of discoveries was far from over. What I saw next shook me deeply and made me question much of what I believed about good and evil, right and wrong. After these initial revelations, my experience took an unexpected and disturbing turn. A being of light, who I instinctively recognized as an angel, appeared by my side. Without words, he guided me away from that welcoming light and took me to a completely different place. It was like we had entered a dark and shadowy valley. The feeling of peace I had experienced before was replaced by a sense of weight and sadness. The air felt dense, almost suffocating. In this valley I saw countless souls, but they were not like the luminous presences I had seen before. These souls seemed to be in agony. Some wandered aimlessly. Others seemed trapped in repetitive cycles of actions. There was a palpable feeling of despair and confusion in the air. Among these souls, I noticed many I recognized as belonging to the LGBTQ community. I saw gay, lesbian, transgender, and transsexual people. This vision deeply shocked me. I felt a knot in my stomach and a squeeze in my heart. My best friend, Ruby, was a lesbian, and the fear that she might end up in that place paralyzed me. Desperately, I turned to the angel and asked if those people were there because of their sexual orientation. The answer I received was not in words, but in an understanding that simply blossomed in my mind. The angel made me understand that it was not the sexuality of these people that led them to suffering. In fact, sexual orientation or gender identity had no relevance in this spiritual realm. What kept them in that state of agony was the way they had lived their lives, disconnected from their spiritual essence. I saw souls that had gotten lost in addictions, that had deliberately hurt others, that had lived selfish and materialistic lives. I saw people who had clung to hate, prejudice, intolerance, and I also saw many souls that simply couldn't accept they had died, who refused to leave their earthly lives behind. I understood that this place was not a traditional concept of hell. It wasn't a place of eternal punishment imposed by a vengeful God. It was more of a state of being, a condition self-imposed by souls that were not prepared or willing to advance on their spiritual journey. The angel showed me that many of these souls were there temporarily. Some would receive help from more evolved beings and would find their way to the light. Others would choose to reincarnate to have new opportunities for learning and growth. This experience made me question much of what I believed about good and evil, right and wrong. I realized that our earthly judgments are often limited and mistaken, that what truly matters are not labels or categories, but how we live our lives, how we treat others, how we cultivate our connection with the divine. Seeing that suffering was painful, but it also brought me a deeper understanding of the complexity of human and spiritual existence. I understood that all of us, regardless of who we are or how we identify, have the same capacity to evolve spiritually or get lost along the way. I left that valley with a sense of compassion I had never experienced before. Compassion not only for the souls I saw suffering, but for all of us, imperfect beings, trying to find our way in this complex journey that is life. But my journey was not yet over. The angel had more to show me, and what I saw next would completely change my perspective once again. After the disturbing experience in the Valley of Shadows, the angel guided me to a completely different place. It was as if we had crossed a portal to another dimension. The contrast was so stark that for a moment I felt disoriented. We found ourselves in a place that can be described as a spiritual colony. It was a realm of radiant light, so bright that it should have blinded my vision. But it didn't. The light seemed to emanate from all directions and simultaneously, from within every being inhabiting that place. The environment was indescribably beautiful. There were structures that seemed made of crystal and light, gardens with flowers of colors I had never seen before, fountains whose waters emitted musical sounds. But the most impressive were the beings inhabiting this place. They were souls in different stages of evolution. Some shone brightly, others had a softer glow, but all of them radiated peace and happiness. I saw beings that seemed to be teaching others, sharing knowledge and wisdom. I came across groups engaged in what appeared to be artistic creation, but on a level that went beyond anything I could comprehend. And then, to my surprise and relief, I once again saw people I recognized as belonging to the LGBTQ community. But here, unlike in the Valley of Shadows, these souls were in perfect harmony with the environment. They shone with the same intensity as the others, some even more. I saw same-sex couples walking hand in hand, their auras merging in a bond as profound as their love. In that place, there were no prejudices, no judgments. Love and authentic expression were celebrated. I understood in that moment how limited our earthly perspectives could be, how often we mistakenly perceive and label others based on our own biases. The angel, noticing my astonishment, conveyed understanding without words. I understood that, in this elevated plane, concepts like gender and sexual orientation didn't carry the same weight they did on Earth. What truly mattered was the essence of the soul, its spiritual evolution, and its ability to love and connect with the divine. I saw souls who, in their earthly lives, faced prejudice and discrimination, but maintained their integrity and love. Souls who, despite the adversities, chose the path of love, compassion, and authenticity. Now, in this spiritual plane, they reaped the rewards of their choices. I was moved to see these souls at peace, spiritually evolving, living in complete happiness. It was an indescribable relief to realize that spirituality and peace in the afterlife didn't depend on earthly labels or identities, but on how we live and cultivate our spiritual connection. In that moment, I felt a wave of shame for all the prejudices I unknowingly carried throughout my life. I realized how our limited earthly views can blind us to the true nature of love and spirituality. The experience in that light-filled colony filled me with hope and joy. I understood that, in the end, what truly matters is the love we share, the compassion we demonstrate, the authenticity with which we live. Our spiritual journey goes far beyond the categories and labels we create on earth. I left there with a new understanding of diversity and inclusion. I understood that each soul is unique and precious, regardless of how it manifests in its earthly incarnation. More importantly, I understood that love in all its forms is sacred and divine. This revelation brought a profound peace to my heart, but also awakened in me a yearning, an intense desire to remain in that place of light and unconditional love. And it was this desire that led me to the next stage of my journey. After witnessing the beauty and peace of that spiritual colony, I was overwhelmed by an irresistible desire to stay. The idea of returning to my physical body, to the world of pain and limitations I had left behind, seemed unbearable. There, in the presence of God and that celestial peace, I felt complete. For the first time in my life, or perhaps beyond life, everything made sense. There were no more doubts. No more fears. It was as if I had finally found my true home. I turned to the angel guiding me, and with all the intensity I could muster, expressed my desire to stay. "Please," I pleaded, "don't make me go back. Let me stay here, in this peace, in this love." The angel looked at me with infinite compassion. There were no words, but I could feel his understanding. He understood my desire, my yearning to remain in that state of grace. In that moment, I felt the presence of Christ approaching. Not the Christ from paintings or statues, but a presence of pure love and infinite wisdom. He looked at me with such love that I felt my entire being melt. Christ, with a voice that was more a feeling than a sound, told me I couldn't stay. His words, or rather his thoughts, were gentle but firm. He reminded me of my husband Samuel, and how much he loved me. He showed me how Samuel was suffering at that moment, sitting beside my body in the hospital, holding my hand and praying for my return. Christ made me understand that I still had a purpose on earth, that my journey there was not complete, that there were lessons I still needed to learn, experiences I needed to live, people I needed to touch with my presence. I wanted to argue, to plead to stay. The idea of leaving that peace, that unconditional love, was heartbreaking. How could I return to a world of pain and suffering after experiencing the perfection of the divine? But as Christ continued to show me the bigger picture of my life, I began to understand. I saw how my experience could help others, how my return could bring comfort and hope to those who were suffering. I saw the paths I still needed to take, the choices I still needed to make. Gradually, even though reluctantly, I began to accept that my time there had come to an end, that I needed to go back. Not because I was being forced, but because, deep down, I understood it was the right thing to do. Christ assured me that what I had experienced there wouldn't be forgotten, that connection with the divine would always be with me, even if it sometimes seemed distant, that I would carry a bit of that light with me to illuminate my path on earth. With one last look at that realm of light and love, I prepared to return. I wasn't happy about the idea, but I had accepted it. I knew I would carry memories and understandings that would forever change the way I viewed life. And so, even against my immediate desire, but in agreement with a deeper understanding, I was gently guided back to my physical body, back to the life I had temporarily left behind. What followed was one of the most difficult and painful experiences of my life. The return to the physical world was nothing like I could have imagined. The return to my physical body was an experience I could never have anticipated. After having experienced the peace and lightness of the spiritual plane, returning to the density of matter was like being abruptly torn from paradise and thrown into a pit of pain and confusion. The first sensation was a sharp, piercing pain. It was as if every cell in my body was screaming in protest. I remember opening my eyes and being immediately blinded by the fluorescent lights of the operating room. The sounds were deafening, the beeping of machines, the urgent voices of the doctors, the metallic noise of surgical instruments. Everything seemed too loud, too bright, too intense. I wanted to scream, to tell them to let me go back, but I couldn't utter a sound. My throat was dry and sore from the breathing tube. I tried to move, but my body felt too heavy, as if I was trapped in the bed. The surgery was still ongoing. I could feel the doctor's hands inside my body, working frantically to stop the bleeding. The pain was nearly unbearable. Every fiber of my being seemed to resist the idea of being back in this physical reality. At that moment, I was overcome by profound frustration and sadness. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go back to the light, to the peace, to the unconditional love I had experienced. The earthly reality seemed too raw, too harsh, too painful in comparison. Gradually, as the anesthesia wore off, I began to hear familiar voices. Samuel was there, holding my hand and speaking words of encouragement. I wanted to respond, to tell him how much I loved him, but I also wanted to express how frustrated I was to have returned. The days that followed were a constant struggle. Physically, my body was recovering from the surgeries, but emotionally and spiritually I felt lost. How could I continue living normally after experiencing something so extraordinary? I often found myself crying, not just for the loss of our baby, but for the loss of that direct connection with the divine. It was as if I had tasted the nectar of the gods and was now condemned to live thirstily for the rest of my life. Samuel was there for me, patient and loving as always, but I felt guilty for not being able to fully reciprocate his love and dedication. A part of me resented having returned just because of him, feeling that I had abandoned something much greater. The nights were particularly difficult. I had vivid nightmares, reliving the experience of near death, but this time unable to reach the light. I would wake up, drenched in sweat, my heart racing, yearning for something I knew I couldn't have again, at least not in this life. During the day, I struggled to reconnect with my previous life. Things that once seemed important now felt trivial. My work as a teacher, which once gave me so much satisfaction, now felt devoid of meaning. How could I worry about historical dates and past events when I had experienced eternity? My relationships were affected as well. Friends and family would visit, offering words of comfort and support. But I felt distant, as if there was an invisible veil separating me from them. How could I explain what I had experienced? How could I share this experience that completely transformed my view of reality? Physically, my recovery was slow and painful. My body, having suffered so many traumas, the loss of the baby, the multiple surgeries, seemed hesitant to heal. Every movement was a reminder of the fragility of our physical existence, something I now understood in a way I never imagined possible. There were times when I wondered if it would have been better not to have returned. The pain of losing our baby, coupled with the longing for that peace and unconditional love I had felt, sometimes seemed more than I could bear. But gradually I began to notice small changes, moments when I could feel an echo of the peace I had experienced. It was as if, every now and then, a ray of that divine light managed to penetrate the density of the material world and touch me. I started to find solace in simple things. The warmth of the sun on my face on a clear morning, the sound of rain gently falling outside, the gentle smile of a nurse. These small moments became anchors, helping me remain connected to this world. Samuel, with his infinite patience, was instrumental in this process. Even without fully understanding what I was going through, he was there, a constant, loving presence. Gradually, I began to open up to him, attempting to share fragments of my experience. It was during one of these conversations that I realized something important. Perhaps I had returned not just for Samuel, but because I still had something to learn, something to do in this world. This realization didn't lessen the pain or the longing I felt, but it gave me a purpose, a reason to continue. The process of readapting to life was long and challenging. There were days when I felt completely lost. Days when the only thing keeping me functioning was the memory of that light and the silent promise I had made. Over time, as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, I began to notice profound changes in my worldview and spirituality. The near-death experience had left indelible marks on my soul, fundamentally altering the way I perceived and interacted with the world around me. One of the most notable changes was how suffering and daily struggles seemed to have lost much of their weight. Things that once made me anxious or irritated, a traffic jam, a late bill, a work disagreement, now seemed ridiculously small. I had glimpsed eternity, and this perspective made everyday problems almost insignificant. This doesn't mean I became indifferent to suffering. On the contrary, my empathy seemed to have expanded. I could feel the pain of others more intensely, more viscerally. But at the same time, I could see beyond this pain, understand its greater purpose in each individual's spiritual growth. My views on religion also radically changed. The doctrines and dogmas that once seemed so important now felt limited, almost childish in their simplicity. I had experienced something that went beyond any organized religion, something that transcended our human attempts to understand the divine. This created some internal conflicts. The church I attended since childhood now seemed strangely empty to me. The pastor's words, which once inspired me, now sounded hollow. I could see with disconcerting clarity who was truly connected to the divine and who used faith in a distorted or superficial way. This new perception extended to all areas of my life. It was as if I had gained some sort of spiritual vision. I could feel people's energy, sense their intentions beyond the words they spoke. This made some social interactions challenging. How could I maintain a polite conversation with someone when I could feel the insincerity behind their smile? My relationship with nature also deepened. I could feel life pulsating in every plant, every animal, the interconnectedness of all living beings, something I had experienced during my near-death experience. Now it was a tangible reality for me. I started spending more time outdoors, seeking to reconnect with that sense of unity I had experienced. However, this new sensitivity also brought challenges. The world sometimes seemed overly noisy, chaotic. I longed for the peace and harmony I had experienced on the other side. Meditation became an essential part of my routine, a way to reconnect even briefly with that divine energy. My way of teaching history also changed. While I previously focused on dates and events, I now tried to show my students the deeper connections, the spiritual lessons we could learn from the past. Some colleagues found my approach strange, but many students seemed to resonate with this new perspective. One of the most profound changes was in relation to death. The fear of death, so common in our society, had completely disappeared for me. I knew with a certainty that went beyond faith that death was not the end. This allowed me to live in a fuller, more present way. However, this absence of fear of death sometimes scared me. There were moments when I found myself longing for that other side, wishing to return to that light. I had to learn to balance this desire with the understanding that I still had a purpose to fulfill in this life. As time passed, I struggled to keep the connection with what I had experienced alive. Sometimes I feared that the memories of my near-death experience might fade, that I might drift away from the divine essence I had encountered. This fear drove me to constantly seek ways to nurture my spirituality, to keep the flame of that transformative experience burning. Now, years after my near-death experience, I'm still trying to fully process what happened to me. Each day is a journey, an opportunity to integrate the lessons I learned during that brief visit to the other side with the realities of daily life. There are days when I feel deeply connected, when I can sense echoes of that peace and unconditional love I experienced. In those moments, I feel immense gratitude for being alive, for having the opportunity to share a bit of that light with the world around me. But there are also challenging days. Days when the density of the material world seems overwhelming, when I feel a longing for that direct connection with the divine. In those moments, I remember Christ's words, reminding me that I still have a purpose here. One of the greatest lessons I've drawn from this experience is about the nature of love. The love I experienced on the other side was so vast, so unconditional, that it made our earthly understanding of love seem like a pale shadow in comparison. Since then, I have tried to bring some of that unconditional love into my daily interactions. It's not always easy, but every small act of kindness, every moment of compassion, seems to reconnect me with that experience. My view of life and death has completely changed. I now understand that death is not something to be feared, but a natural transition, a passage to another state of being. This doesn't mean I don't feel pain when I lose someone I love. The pain of separation still exists, but it's tempered by the knowledge that we will meet again. One of the hardest things has been trying to explain my experience to others. Words seem inadequate to describe what I went through. I often feel like I'm speaking a language no one else understands. This can be lonely at times, but has also made me profoundly value those moments when I can truly connect with someone, when I see a glimmer of understanding in their eyes. My experience has also changed my perspective on different beliefs and religions. I now see that all spiritual traditions are attempts to describe and understand the same divine reality. This has made me more tolerant, more open to different points of view. At the same time, it has made me less patient with dogmatism and religious intolerance. I continue to struggle to maintain the connection with the peace and truth I experienced during my near-death experience. I'm afraid that over time, these memories might fade, that I might drift away from the divine essence I found. To combat this, I dedicate time every day to meditation and reflection. I keep a journal where I not only record the memories of my experience, but also the day-to-day moments when I feel that connection. I now understand that my journey on earth is not yet over. There are lessons to be learned, challenges to be overcome, and perhaps new ways to help others find their own spiritual truths. Each day we have the chance to bring a little more of that light into the world. I don't know what the future will bring. I don't know if I will experience another event like that before the end of my earthly journey, but I am sure that I have been deeply transformed by that brief glimpse of the beyond. And while I sometimes still face the duality of living in this world after experiencing something so transcendent, I am grateful for the opportunity to be here, to make a difference, even if in small and seemingly insignificant ways. My near-death experience taught me that each of us carries a spark of the divine, that we are all in our essence beings of light and love. And while we may sometimes forget this, caught up in the worries and challenges of daily life, this fundamental truth remains. It's this understanding that gives me the strength to move forward, to face each new day with courage and compassion, knowing that every moment is a chance to grow, to love, to evolve. And so I continue my journey, carrying with me the memories of that light, of that unconditional love, trying each day to be a little more of the light being I realized we can all be.